through a really great process of exploration on branding of districts and revitalizing urban cores.
Hello, everyone. So I originally thought of my concept when I became curious about how to connect areas with little or no open space. They have the issue of proximity. This is how the idea of branding came to life. I began to do research on branding a product, and then from there I related it back to landscape architecture. I began to think, how would this branding function on the ground level? It would function through navigation, engagement, and reassurance. This led me to my big idea. My big idea is district branding is the concept of transforming urban areas of viable industry into vibrant, unique districts that celebrate culture, commerce, and life. I began to do research to see where I could possibly implement my branding. And the place that I felt that would be most beneficial of using this branding concept is the Los Angeles Fashion District. Now, this area is extremely exciting to design. And one thing that's really great is that it has more opportunities than it does constraints. But what's ruling these constraints is the public's perception of the site. There is research that when fashion students graduate from design school, they immediately move away to Europe or New York. And at the same time, this same district has trouble attracting new talent as well. I had interviewed another designer who had worked in Los Angeles Fashion District and then moved away to New York. And through email, she made a comment that stood out to me. She said that she didn't feel inspired by her surroundings, which leads me into the next constraint, that the Los Angeles Fashion District has very little foot traffic. New York designers have commented that they feel inspired in New York by people, seeing people, being immersed with people, that vibrancy. So those are issues in my design that I hope to remedy. So through my site analysis, I came to see exactly where I might want to have this branding concept take place. I am going to do this through fusion goals of community, commerce, and education. The community is what little residential areas that this district has, which is only lofts and apartments and one hotel. The commerce that I want to focus on, because there is wholesale throughout the site, I'm going to focus on these two mart clusters that anchor both sides of the site. There's a primary mart cluster, which is where most of the buyers come into town and they go to these marts, they look at the line, and then purchase what's going to be in the stores. Then there's also the secondary mart cluster, where they look at what the primary mart cluster is designing and they follow that trend. So these are two areas that I feel are really important that I want to design back to. My third fusion goal is education. I mentioned before that these young, talented designers are moving away. So this is something that I also really want to focus on. There are only 2 fashion schools. One of them is inside the California Mart, central to the district. And then also the other fashion school, FITM, is outside of the Los Angeles Fashion District, which is an irony within itself. So that's going to be part of the challenge of the branding. How am I going to connect back to this school that is outside of the actual district and not part of the original brand? So overlaying all of my fusion goals, I'm going to connect them together with this 9th Street activity spine. And from there, that should pull together how my design is actually going to work out. So my concept diagram is my spine connections. It's going to start with FITM, then move down the 9th Street area, and then connect to the primary mart cluster I mentioned earlier. Moving further down 9th Street to the Santee Alley, which will have a public shopping. Moving further down, it will connect back to the Flower District, which is actually a district within this district. Also moving to City Market, then it will go down to the secondary mart cluster. And this is how my master plan is organized. So starting with the FIDM Fashion School, at this intersection of Grand and 9th, the street will begin to change and form into this new area, and you'll begin to see how this branding corridor is going to start. I designed an area of outdoor classrooms, so it's sort of an off-campus site, and it's organized in a way that students will learn how to do domestic production. So there's a knit house, a screen house, and a dye house. And what's weaving all of these houses together is a overhead structure where students can hang their fabric to dry in the process of this dyeing and this screen printing. And at the same time, it doubles as a fabric canopy that students are able to do their actual outdoor classrooms under, because this area, of course, is extremely hot, which I'm showing here in this picture. The center of the site has a catwalk, so where students can practice for their senior fashion shows, as well as local talent can use this site if they're not able to be in the larger venues as well. Moving on, further down the 9th Street corridor, we meet the primary mart cluster, which I had mentioned before would be next. So we're penetrating the site. We're moving closer to the core of what the fashion district is about. So I chose 3 areas, 3 parking lots that we're going to repurpose into these vibrant park spaces. I am going to connect the California Mart to the Ace Hotel that I mentioned before. And in this area, the program is for industry and community. So the fashion show is for the general public, promenading, people watching, as well as for the actual fashion industry as well. So there's tent structures and made from fabric from my campus, those students in there learning those new skills. And it's also in a prime area where where models can have their makeup done, their hair done, and then move on to the fashion catwalk. So the fashion catwalk is located in an area above a reflection pool. So there's water, and the catwalk is 2 feet above that, and models are walking across this catwalk. So there's these beautiful reflections. There's reflections of water, there's reflection of the models, there's reflections of the iconic Ace Hotel in the background, there's reflections of these mannequins as well that are running through the site. So it's just a big scene that will be a perfect backdrop to these evening activities. As well, moving further, is the Mannequin Courtyard. So the Mannequin Courtyard has these figures that are moving throughout the site. They're running, they're sitting on benches with people, they're standing and also watching the shows themselves. They're not people-sized, they're a little bit bigger than that. So that way, as people are being vibrant and walking through this district, they see from a distance these figures. It's another way of branding and creating this momentum, this movement. Going further, between these 2 buildings, 2 marts, there is the lighting corridor that people can follow and sit at the bottom and do more people watching as well. There's the terrace lawn that have opportunities for people to sit in sun and shade. And then also we have this red band that connects all of these areas together. And it's sort of like a red carpet. It gives you that type of feeling. And it's shaped like an arrow pushing you through other areas of the site. In the upper region, there is the fashion digital displays that will begin to show repeating images of the fashion shows that people may not be able to go themselves. But it's a way to continue this trend forecasting throughout the throughout the district and as people come to visit. And then there's an amphitheater for more promenading, more shows. And then at the very top, we have this elevated purse gallery. So these are installations of these purses that are large, that you can see from a distance. They're colorful, and they're a complete contrast to the backdrop, where you see it from a distance and you want to be there too. What's going on over there? That is a way of having more wayfinding. And it's also connecting back to the community. As I had shown you earlier, there are apartments and lofts, and they start right here. So the community will be using these spaces the most. So it'll be constantly being used for evening and day. So looking back at my project, I wanted to look at how I was able to brand this site. I used repeating forms. As I mentioned earlier, these mannequins are running through the site, but underneath the tree canopies that I wasn't able to show here will be in the book, these same mannequins are running on the sidewalks as well. So they're part of the community and something that really stands out. I designed these unique light fixtures in the shape of articles of clothing. So this one's a tank. I have another one's a t-shirt. When you come closer, you're able to see that as well. And they're also repeating throughout the site, as I showed you in the lighting corridor. There's a red carpet band also pushing people throughout the site. So something that is interesting that I did have to think about is what happens in areas that have more than one brand. As I mentioned, the flower district is inside the fashion district. So what starts to happen when these brands come to the same area? So here, on the street of Wall, where the flower district moves further south, along with the fashion coming together, it creates its own community, its own separate identity and its own separate district. So that is a way of doing more types of branding. So in conclusion, I will say that I feel I achieved an area where people feel inspired. They feel like they have tons of creativity, and the buyers, when they come to visit, they'll want to stay, and this will be a strong economic driver for our city and state. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Hi, yes.
Did you think about making the mannequins life-size so that students could dress them, or even in a gorilla style, like people could come in and...
Well, even then, they could still do, that's a really great idea, I might add that to my book, but students could still do that and just make it the size of these mannequins. But I wanted it to be that when there's groups and swaths of people, that they still see the mannequins above them. So I made them a little bit bigger and not people size.
Still do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, hello.
The stakeholder issue, the fashion district has its own district committee.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of got to get them on your side when you do things in that area. Most of those districts do.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a chance to grill anybody, like the head guy?
I did email them and I couldn't get through. No one responded to me.
Yeah, they'd be helpful.
Yeah.
And this is a great concept that you come up with, and they don't want to lose people.
Yeah.
And the starkness of the streets in that district are a problem. I mean, like you say, interaction, collaboration, and talk to people and have lunch with people that are of the same profession and ideas and so on. So I'd really like to know what his opinion is, or their opinion. You might want to run this by and maybe give some thought.
Oh, I will.
There you go. Now, the other thing is, you brought up a lot of energy that's along 9th and down Santee and the Flower Mart. And that's there. You could have there on Saturday and there's wall-to-wall people.
That's why I chose it to be the activity spine.
But I don't
Yes.
see you responding to that.
Well, you can't really see it here because I wasn't able to do another scene for it. So that will be more in my book. But it's still a continuation of the mannequins, the streetscape changes.
What happens to the street along 9th and between the mart, the clothing mart and flower mart.
What happens to, I'm sorry.
In Europe, what happens to the street? That's the energy street. 9th.
Right.
And then you branch off like down Santee Alley, and
Yes.
that's activity because of compression.
Yes,
You got 60,000 people in a 10-foot wide alley.
yes, yes.
So what's your approach to 9th?
Tonight?
Connector.
Well,
I mean, what you said in mixing the two districts, the flower and fashion, back to the market.
oh, so what's going to happen on 9th Street?
Yeah.
So on 9th Street, I would, of course, widen the street, so that way there will be more ways for people to have more retail and more pop-up opportunities on the street. And then also, I didn't have a chance to mention this, that at night I wanted to have these hologram fashion shows where these holograms walk the street amongst the people as well. So
There's a little difference too between the designers in the fashion mart and the wholesalers down 9th.
yes,
You got low end, high end.
Yes.
High fashion, sell it for what you can get.
yes.
How does that all work?
So the streets will be continuous and they'll start to change at different places. But over in the San Pedro Wholesale Mart, which would be the secondary mart cluster, their buildings are filled with bunches of color, and that is something that would change when I get closer to San Pedro, which would be, sorry, I couldn't put too many more scenes, but that's also in the book. But I did think about it, yes.
Because this is a vibrant area with the issues you brought up. To be addressed by this design is really appropriate. I'd like to see a little more detail
Yeah.
in the big spaces and along 9th and everything.
Steve?
Oh, hi.
I like the idea, I was involved when you first started this idea, and I love that you actually kept with it. Because I think it's so neat to have a project that's really commerce driven. I know you were really conscious of that the whole time, wanting to make this, we have the film industry that's here, and the fashion industry could be more here as well in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
I really like the first, your introductory and how you did your research on it, and also the master plan, just the connections and how you see this as a really, could be very dramatic.
Yes.
Very dramatic. And I think that's sort of what I can see this fabric, area changing and always being different and being more inviting for people to come. So I really applaud you for sticking with it and thinking of, really a bigger idea here as far as what the graphics might be and what the art aspects of it are. So it'd be very exciting. I think you should try and sell this.
And this is also only like phase one, because eventually all of this will start to bleed and fill out.
So it becomes a destination.
Yes.
Shelley.
Oh, hi.
I'm just so thrilled to have seen you do this, and the fact that you are from the garment industry, right? Which I don't think you announced. This is an example of somebody being an expert in a field and using their expertise to expand to the next field that they're working in. And it's so complete. You really knew what the necessity was and what the elements were, and I applaud you for the development of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you tell me the name of the street where on your sector like panel it says longer, the big long street at a diagonal?
It's
Now
this
back
one?
here on this, right here, yes.
I'm sorry, which
Yeah,
one?
right there, the one going on the diagonal,
This-
yes, is that?
So it's spring and Main,
Is that spring going at that diagonal?
Main, and then
Main.
spring, and then 9th.
What I wanted to ask you is, in terms of your visuals and your color and also your plantings, is there a way, or how do you feel it would move people who, because the urban space looks to be on your map fairly large, so right in the middle where you see like 3 green areas, is there a way you're connecting that visually or through a theme to guide, say, a pedestrian to the next site? How are you thinking that?
You're saying through
The other
here?
way, I'm thinking from that where the catwalk is and then up to the other 2. How are you moving your pedestrians or people that maybe don't know the urban area up to the next section of your plan?
Okay. So that was why I have like something pointing over in this, the red band pointing. So that's a way of being continuous. There is an alleyway here, so you can come through the back part of the courtyard to get to these digital displays. And also, oh yeah, sorry. I have this red string that links everything together. But also, at the same time, to your point, there's also a red, the red carpet continues in the middle of the street as well on this center median, so people can see.
So that is pretty visible then to
Yes.
draw you, want
Yes.
to draw
Yes.
pedestrian. Like
And then there's a
almost
light
like
fixture
an
there
urban
as well.
walk or something to get you moving to the next section.
Yes.
So you don't get isolated in.
Correct. You are correct. Yes.
Definitely.
One of the things that really bothers me, that Spring and Main divides us, it's a huge street.
Mhm.
I don't see how you connect with it, and I'm sorry to say, I think that you missed an opportunity there.
Mhm.
Because it acts as a huge barrier, and I don't see you providing a pedestrian link or even an opportunity to say, during fashion district events, I would close this off, and this paving pattern now really drives it home, and it's still connected. So to me, you let the streets continue divided, and the opportunity was to not. And I think you took it as parcels instead of a district. So I think it's a great idea, but I think that where you really could have taken it, you failed to go, and I'm a little disappointed in that, because I think it could have made so much more sense there. And so I really encourage you to not let existing infrastructure separate a design idea like that, because that tiny little piece in that middle of that street, I'm sorry, that's like a spoonful of water to a drowning man. It's not really, I don't think it's sufficient. I think you had a bold idea, and you let the infrastructure keep it from being grand.
So you could have made that like a drivable plaza or something that
Exactly.
actually
Okay.
reads bigger than the street.
Okay. All right. I will keep that in mind.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, I invite you to come and look at the board.